I am Jimbo Paris, and you are listening to The Jimbo Paris Show. Welcome, I'm Jimbo Paris. Welcome to The Jimbo Paris Show. And today we have Tony Bradshaw. And basically, he is the author of The Millionaire Choice. And it's an amazing book. And let's see what he has to say.
Hey, Jim, how are you doing today?
Great. I love your setup. Looks good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is my trading station behind me. And then I used to have a library, but we're looking at moving to another house. So I've got my books all packed up right now.
Excellent. So again, this show's about you. Let's get into the specifics here. So what is it that you do?
Yeah, I do a couple of different things. One of the things I'm trying to do is do what I call develop a citywide financial transformation system. And I haven't really released that to the public. I just started talking about it with a few people more recently. But the foundation of that really is, the Millionaire Choice, which is what I did when I was 25. I made a millionaire choice and created a millionaire plan. I believe anybody can become a millionaire. I've interviewed enough people from broke backgrounds, people with, 6th grade educations that became multimillionaires, people that were homeless at age 19, millionaires by age 30. And so I really do believe anybody can become a millionaire in the United States, that is. Other countries, they face different hardships, but definitely in the United States. And so what my book teaches is that what I call the 10 keys of the millionaire, which are the foundational elements that I used in my journey to become a millionaire. And a lot of guys teach, finance. A lot of the things are very similar. There's a lot of overlap. I think what makes me a little different is that I believe once you learn those things, you can predict when you're going to become a millionaire plus or minus 1 year. And so for me, my plan carried me out about 15 years. I've met people that have done it as young as soon as 7 years. What I typically find is between 10 and 20 years is the range that once people decides to go on this wealth journey, they're able to achieve that goal. And then that component is part of what I call a citywide financial transformation system, which is a bigger picture vision of what I have, which I would love to see everybody in Nashville, Tennessee, my hometown, have a millionaire plan just like I did when I was 25. And so I'm banding together with a bunch of people, other financial teachers here in town, trying to create a financial speakers network so we can shoulder that burden together. I don't think I can do that by myself. It's too big of a goal. But if I can get 20, 30, 40, 50 different financial teachers in the local market to work together, then I believe we can accomplish that goal. And some of these people have the same hearts that I do. They're just working individually. We're all doing our own things versus working together. And there's power in numbers, Jim. And that's what I'm trying to do. Outside of that, man, I'm doing some coaching, business coaching, and some what I call influencer coaching. I worked for a guy named Dave Ramsey for 15 years and helped his company through the digital transformation, really become a digital company. He had been doing his business for about 10 years before I got there. And I kind of ushered in the digital age through that business for 15 years and then left there in 2016.
Excellent. And how long have you actually been in this industry?
Yeah, so I made my millionaire choice at 25, joined Dave Ramsey's team at age 30, and then did 15 years with him. Went out to Salt Lake City for a short stint with another guy that had a similar mission to Dave. That was short-lived due to some SEC involvement. So I was only out there, but that's where I got my vision for the millionaire choice was while I was in Salt Lake City in 2017. And it's one thing to do it for somebody else. It's another thing to do it for yourself. So my book, I started writing on my book in 2017 and then released it 2018. So doing this on my own has been through since about 2017. So that'd be about 20, right around 20 years, 22 years.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And can you kind of give the history a bit of your career, how you sort of began to adopt this mantle of being kind of the millionaire advisor in a way?
Yeah, sure. So, I'll rewound the clock because everything we do in life, even down to our childhood, plays out in some way in who we become and who we are. And I started learning about that when I started learning about, vocation. So there's a wonderful guy named Dan Miller who was very instrumental in me leaving my previous career, which I was an engineer, mechanical engineer, manufacturing engineer. And I got, infatuated with the internet. once I started figuring out, and this was like mid 1990s, late 1990s. The power of the internet and being able to manipulate data and send data all over the country. That was a very powerful thing for me. So that made me decide to leave behind engineering and move into the digital age, or to, the web. And so I learned how to program, how to, manipulate databases, build databases. I wouldn't say I was particularly good at it, but I was, good enough to be able to switch careers and make something out of it. And I think my real gifting is more about just thinking out of the box and having a business mind and being a problem solver, right? So engineers are problem solvers. So I have that skill. I like to find problems and solve them and make things better. So from there, that led me into Dave Ramsey's organization, where I built up his stuff. But before that, I was already on the same alignment with Dave. I was an anti-debt guy at 25. Once I realized I was broke and that was not a good life to live, I started transforming my finances. I started learning about money, and very quickly realized that it doesn't take a lot of effort to really shift. You have to make a mental shift, and then you have to make a behavioral shift after that. And so what I did, instead of spending all of my money every week and going into debt every year, which fortunately I was only about $16,000 in debt before I woke up, I made a shift back the other direction and said, you know what? I'm going to live on a third of what I make. I'm going to pay off a debt with a third of what I make, and I'm going to invest a third of what I make. And because of my situation, I was able to do that. It's a very simple model. I think anybody probably under the age of about 20, 23, 24 could probably do that. Once you shift into getting married, having kids, your models shift a little bit. Your financial model has to shift. I did not have a wife figured into my financial plan. That was not part of the formula for me. I didn't think that far ahead. So she brought in about $20,000 in debt when we got married, started paying off that. We had 6 kids. I didn't plan on having 6 kids. That was not part of my financial plan. I tried to talk my wife into using cloth diapers because I was, money focused. I'm like, hey, we can save a lot of money if we use cloth diapers and not these disposables. And she wasn't having it. So fortunately, I had wiser counsel in my life, and they said, don't use the cloth diapers, Tony. I did cloth diapers. My boss said I did cloth diapers. Don't do the cloth diapers. Pay the money. Do the disposables. So we did, but I did the math on that. We spent about $9,000 in diapers across 6 kids. I mean, yeah, it adds up, man. It was about $1,500 a kid. Now that was 20 years ago for most of the kids. Some of them are about 10 years ago. And I don't know what diapers are costing these days with inflation, but I can't imagine. But that was kind of the journey. And then at Dave's company, led some digital stuff, digital business development, had a lot of fun there. And then really, I hate to say it this way, but I really didn't learn a lot more financially during those 15 years because, there's a model that Dave teaches, and I adopted that model. And then when I left Dave's, that's when I started expanding my own financial mind again. So I've got in my book, if you've read it, Millionaire Key number 4 is Get Money Smart. And I believe you've got to, just like you learn math, English, and science in school, from age, if you go to school from K through 12, that's 12 years of school, 13 years of school, that is. Then you go off to college, you get 4 more, you get a master's degree, you get 1 or 2, you get a doctorate, you get another 1 or 2. And just like you study, you have to study those subjects to become masters of those subjects. You have to think that way about money. You have to think the same way, because you have to become a student of money. If you want to learn how money works, you got to become a student of money. You got to learn how it works. And that means you can't just read one book. A lot of people read Robert Kiyosaki's book, which is a great catalyst, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that's a big one. Like when I have people on my show, they go, I was broke and I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, and then I became rich. And they started working on that model. And there's other people who, didn't do as good of a job with that book. But a lot of the people I talked to used Robert Kiyosaki's book as a catalyst to shift their mind. And then after they shifted their mind, they shifted their behavior and started building wealth. But that's kind of the long and short. I'm not a CFP, certified financial planner. I'm not any of those things. I don't have any of those accolades. I'm a planner. That's what I do. I did planning for manufacturing and engineering. I did a millionaire plan for myself. I've done millionaire plans for other people. And a wonderful thing happens when I see that psychologically with the people I help, is when you put it in black and white and they see that plan, they go, oh, I'm $30,000 in debt. I got like 10 credit cards, average debt of $3,000 on each one, or more in some cases. And, some of those credit cards got 24% interest. They don't see a way out. Most people don't have a vision. They don't have the capability of being a visionary. They can't create a new vision for themselves. So they're stuck in their lifestyle. And the way I talk about it is being on a hamster wheel. Like, it's like you're on a hamster wheel and you work, spend, work, spend, work, spend, work, spend, and you're there. Somebody might say treadmill, but I like the hamster wheel because the little hamster's running really, really fast, usually a lot faster than most of us run on the treadmill, right? And so they look frantic, and that's the lifestyle that a lot of people are living today. And I was living that lifestyle. I had a little bit of, I wasn't that tight yet. I didn't get myself in too much trouble, but that's the lifestyle that we live and grow in. And I've got some family members that are living that lifestyle today. Even though I'm on the journey to become even more wealthier than I am, my family members did not come along on that journey with me. And that's a sad thing. There's not a whole lot I can do about that one.
Yeah, so I was doing a bit of research on you, and you sort of grew up in a bit of the income of the neighborhood you grew up in was a bit different from what you were making now, from what I understood.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a different lifestyle. Some of the things I've even forgotten. I've remembered a few more of those in the recent days. When I wrote my book, it wasn't uncommon for us to have our water cut off. I think it was pretty much an annual occurrence. And it's because parents ran out of money. They couldn't pay the bills. The water man would come out, shut the water off. I would go out, at first my dad was doing it. When I got old enough, I would do it. Right. And they use this tool called a water key. You can pick them up at Home Depot or Lowe's. And it's just a piece of metal with another couple pieces of metal welded to it at the end, and a little handle at the top. And I would pop open the water meter, drop the little water key in there, turn the meter on. We could take showers, we could wash dishes. And that works pretty well until they decide that, hey, they turn the water back on. So the next time they come out, they put a padlock on it. And so they turn it off the first time, they padlock it. And then I believe even at one point, I believe we had our meter taken out and had to pay a large reconnection fee at that point. And so that was a lot more expensive to get those kinds of things done. That was pretty common. I didn't think much about it back then. But now being an adult, I'm like, that's not a normal way of life. That's not normal. I didn't wear the nice clothes. Many of the pants I wore in school were, several years older. As a young guy, you grow a little fast. Sometimes you get growth spurts. I had one point, I had to laugh about it because I was walking in gym for a pep rally, and a couple of good-looking girls looked over at me, cute girls, and I thought they called out my name. And I'm like, oh, getting some attention here, right? I turned my head, and they asked me if I was expecting it to rain today. And I'm like, I'm pretty slow on the uptake, Jim. And so I looked over and kind of like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I just kind of turned and kept going. And later I'm like, oh, they were making fun of my pants because my pants were about 2-3 inches off my ankles. And of course they were, a lot of the kids I was going to school with, we were in private school. My parents sacrifice. They believed in giving us the best education they can afford, faith-based education. And so they sacrificed a lot for that, and even though we were, I wouldn't say struggled financially, there were some, we never had trouble putting food on the table. Like, I don't remember ever going hungry at all. It was just things like that. And, in our inside of our house, we weren't the best housekeepers. It's very disorganized, and not to trash on my parents at all, because we all have our problems and things. And when you look at where my parents grew up from, both of them came from broken homes. So they did not have good models, and I'm a big believer, it's a foundation. Like, you can either build a foundation where your children after you can step on that foundation. And my parents gave me a much better foundation in life than they had. My dad was out of school in 9th or 10th grade with his last year of education. He has trouble reading. He's very apprehensive about reading and struggles with it, And so he did not have a father figure in his life, and was supporting himself pretty much at age 9, 10 years old, trying to survive. And that was his lifestyle, not a lot of family support structure there. My mom was a little bit better, but she had a very dysfunctional family as well. So there wasn't a lot of, other than her mom, she didn't get support from siblings. It was a very dysfunctional single family household. Even today, it's a weird thing. But weird families are all over the place, right, Jimbo?
Exactly. So, kind of getting back to your to sort of your knowledge here, what are sort of your thoughts on things like personal finance?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that you got to do, that people need to do when they start, okay, I'm talking about starting to break free off that hamster wheel I mentioned, because 70% of people, over 70% of people, were living paycheck to paycheck before this incredible inflation that just hit. So it would not surprise me if you're looking at 85% of people right now living paycheck to paycheck, just because of the inflation and the gas prices and the food prices and everything else that's going on. Would not surprise me in the slightest. So the first thing you got to do is you got to develop a vision, right? So most people don't have a financial vision, so they just keep repeating the same things their parents did and their grandparents did before them and their great grandparents did before them. So there's this cycle that kind of gets repeated in your family until you break it, right? I think I saw a quote, I can't remember who wrote it, but it says, if you don't have any millionaires in your family, be the first millionaire. And that's what I am. I'm a first generation millionaire. I'm not a silver spoon, right? So I didn't inherit anything. In fact, most people who inherit money end up losing it. The family loses that wealth. So it's once you get wealth, like I've gotten, I've got to figure out how to get my kids to then also come along with their mindset and shift with me, so they don't just lose it, right? So that's the cycle, and I don't have that figured out yet. I'm working on it. But the first thing you got to do is shift that vision and develop a vision. So if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey is the best in the world at getting people in the game of finance. There is no second closest person to Dave other than Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, I hear a lot of people, Robert's book is very international. I think Dave's probably a little bit stronger in the U.S. For personal finance than Robert. I think Robert's is strong in the U.S., but also stronger in international world as well. But Dave is giving people a vision, because most people who are broke can't imagine a different way to live. So what they do is they go, I'm broke, this hurts. What can I do differently? And they find Dave Ramsey, because Dave Ramsey is pretty much the most accessible guy out there. And he's got the best platform. So what they do is they go, oh, Dave Ramsey says I can be debt free. And so that's the vision. You can be debt free. He's giving you a vision that's attainable for your mindset and where you're at. If you're broke and struggling and you can't pay your bills, you can't imagine being a millionaire. That's difficult to imagine being a millionaire. That's a big vision. Like how can you go from being broke and not paying your bills and borrowing money to being a millionaire? That's a big jump. But they can make a smaller step, and that's a baby step. That's why Dave calls them the baby steps. And they jump into this vision of being debt free, and along the way they learn something. For me, what I'm trying to do is to get people a vision of becoming a millionaire. Now, I would like to tell them, hey, you're going to be a multimillionaire, and they will be. If they latch onto a millionaire mindset, they will eventually be a multimillionaire. But I can't tell them that, because the vision's too big. You can't go from, it's very difficult to go from being broke to imagining you can be debt free. It's even harder to believe you can be a millionaire. It's even harder to believe you can be a multimillionaire. So the millionaire threshold for me is the lowest boundary to wealth. And I realize that interesting things happens to people, Jimbo, on this journey. And it's the same thing that happened to me. Once I believed I could be a millionaire, my mind started working on that problem. It figured out how to do it. And then it got smarter over time, and it produced it, and I was able to hit my goal. Now, once I got closer to that millionaire status, and once I broke through that millionaire status, then you ask the question, what's next, right? So, and it's a little bit different to go from being a millionaire to being a multimillionaire, because your mind has shifted, and you're moving in a different direction. You're moving at a higher rate. So like for me, I probably have been stuck in a millionaire mindset, not a multimillionaire mindset, for a while, even though I've been a millionaire now for a decade. I've made more wealth, and I am, my net worth is higher than $1 million, but I wouldn't say that I've shifted to the next level of thinking until more recently, where I'm going, okay, what's it look like to get to 10 million? What's it look like to get to 100 million? So, and you're talking about doing that in one generation, to go from, hey, here's a broke person at 25 to somebody who's mentally capable of developing $100 million net worth. And the reason I say that is because I've got some friends now that I've associated with that went from broke lifestyle families similar to mine that are now net worth at 25 to $50 million, and they're only like 33 years old. So think about that. So it took me till 40. These other guys I'm meeting are doing it by 30, 35 years old, and they're developing much more wealth. And they used a different formula, right? And that's perfectly fine. Everybody's got their own journey. We're just here to inspire people to do it. So that's the biggest thing on the front is you gotta shift your vision and your belief, like what you can believe. Then after you do that, you have to acquire knowledge, right? And inside of that, character too. So the first millionaire key I have is not about money. It's about character. You have to develop strong character. To build and keep wealth, you have to develop strong character. And the reason for that is there's plenty of rich people who lost it all. Plenty of rich people who lost everything. They made bad habits. And there's a lot other bad habits than just character. But, the fastest way you can lose half your wealth, the answer is divorce. You can screw your marriage up. I came very close to screwing my marriage up a number of years ago. Fortunately, I was committed to saving it. And fortunately, my wife didn't kick me out. So she put in some work. I put in some work. And now I tell you, my 24-year marriage is better than it's ever been, even since the beginning. Like it's good and getting better. But it takes work. That's part of it. I wish I had known that and understood that principle when I got married 24 years ago. The journey would have been a lot better. But that's develop strong character. The second one doesn't have anything to do with money either. It's called maximize your time. Your most precious asset is your time. Everybody's born with the same amount of time, 24 hours a day. Depending on how you live, you may or may not get as much. But when you think about your first 30 years, everybody's pretty much got the same amount of time. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, you can name any wealthiest person in the world besides maybe an Arab sheik, somebody that was born into oil family or something like that. Might be a little bit different. But the average person that builds wealth, 80%, according to the Millionaire Next Door book, 80% of millionaires in the U.S. are first-generation millionaires. I'm one of those. But we weren't born with financial knowledge. I didn't learn mine until I was 25. I've met some people that started learning financial knowledge at age 5. And the catalyst was that their parents wouldn't buy them a candy bar at the store. So the little 5-year-old goes, why won't mama let me buy a candy bar at the store? And they worked on that problem in their head, and they worked on that problem. And they go, I know what it is. That's a money problem. And when I grow up, I'm going to be rich. And guess what? By 25, they were a millionaire. And they mentally started at age 5, and they were a millionaire at age 25. So that journey started 20 years earlier than mine. So that guy was already, that was a conscious millionaire guy that wrote the book, The Conscious Millionaire, if you want to go check that one out. But he was age 5, made that commitment, became a millionaire at 25. I was just getting started at 25. So those are two of the first keys. And those are what I call foundational. And then you get into getting money smart. So we went from vision to character, time, and then you get educated, right? We talked about that earlier. And then once you get educated, you can then put your plan together. And here's the beautiful thing about getting educated. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to know everything. You just got to know enough to get started so that you can start to change and shift your world. So for me, I didn't know anything about real estate investing. But I did learn some principles about, you should buy a house. You should put a renter in your house. I tried to get my best friend to move in at the time. I said, hey, let's go buy a house, and I'll put you in as a renter. And he goes, no, I don't want to rent from you. He said, I'll be a co-owner, but I'm not going to rent from you. Now, I should have gone ahead and bought the house, but I didn't. I had a good deal with my mom and dad, studio bedroom apartment, $200 a month in rent and board. And so I just covered my food, my electricity, my water, my internet. Like, it covered everything. And actually, I paid for my own internet. That was dial-up back then, so we had dial-up modems back then. So I didn't buy the house, but I did start investing in stocks and mutual funds. So my path to wealth was stocks and mutual funds, and now I've got mostly real estate. Probably maybe 80-90% of my assets are in real estate now.
Excellent. Okay, and how do you sort of encourage people to kind of make their millionaire choice and also kind of create their millionaire plan? Can you kind of explain how all that works?
Yeah. So if somebody listens to my show, it's a very simple show. It's called the Millionaire Choice Show, where we talk to millionaires and future millionaires about how to build wealth, what to do with it once you have it, because wealth has a purpose. And so I try to help people develop a purpose behind their wealth. I didn't have a purpose behind my wealth. Well, I did actually when I was developing it. It was basically to live life however I wanted to at 40. So when I developed my millionaire plan, my initial plan was to be a millionaire at 40 and then live off my investments and spin off about 10% interest a year. So that was going to spin off $100,000. That was twice or three times what I was making in his job. I'm like, life is going to be good. If I can make $100,000 at 40 and I only make 39,000 now, I'm living a much better life. That the answer to that is very true. Now, did it play out that way? I didn't really have inflation calculated into the formula or living expenses. So that made a big difference. So you have to have a different goal. But for me to get started on the journey, that was enough. And so what I try to do with my interviews is I try to share other people's stories. And I love the stories that are so ridiculous that people can't make excuses anymore, because everybody is either going to say what they say about millionaires is, oh, that person got lucky. That's a lie. That's a myth. Okay. That's not true. They did not get lucky. They worked very hard. They educated themselves. They worked very hard. It's kind of an insult, honestly, because, I went to school for 4 years. I worked very difficult jobs at 60, 70, 80 hours a week. At one point, I was working 100 hours a week, if not more, trying to earn money that I needed for the job that I was on. I don't want to live that lifestyle, perpetually, but for a season, it's okay. I did that stretch for about a month, working that hard for about a month, about, close to 80 to 100 hours a week for about a month to get a project out. So we don't want to insult people. So it's not about getting lucky. The other thing is, rich people are not bad. There are bad rich people, but there are bad poor people too. So there's not all rich people are not bad. So, but what I think one of the lies people tell themselves is rich people are bad, so I don't want to be rich because I don't want to be a bad person. The reality is, if you're a good person, you're going to be good with money. If you're a bad person, you're going to be bad. You have to make sure, check your heart and, keep on track, because it can go off, or else it didn't happen to me. I don't know very many bad rich people. I know probably more bad poor people than I do bad rich people, right? So that I've seen in my lifetime. They do exist. Money's not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. So a lot of people, I just met a guy the other day, and we were talking about wealthy people, and he goes, oh, money's bad, and you got too much, it just makes people go off the rails, and money's the root of all evil. I said, nope, correction. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. So, you can love the wrong things, but I love what money allows me to do. I don't love money itself. So, and money allows me to enjoy life more, to help more people in need. There's a lot of people that need help, Jimbo. A lot of people. There's 40 million people trapped in human trafficking. 4 million of those are in sex trafficking. 99% of those are women. And we won't go into the gory details of what happens there. Almost 1 billion people will go hungry like every day in the world. Like 15% of the world's population go hungry every day in the world. That's a big problem. It shouldn't be a problem that even exists, in my opinion, to be truthful. But the reality is, the people who have the money right now, they don't want to fix that problem. That problem is a fixable problem. The only reason that problem exists is because the people that have the money, the real money, don't want to fix it. And that's a fact. Okay. And then, those are two of the bigger problems. Orphans, there's over 147 million orphans in the world today. So those are three really big problems, but there could be smaller problems in your own area that you need to be solved. We've helped out some single moms. We've helped out some broken families before. When you have money, you can do those things. So that's what I try to inspire people with. Money's it's just a tool like any other tool. If you've ever hammered a nail, it's the same thing. That's what money is. You just got to use the tool properly, learn how to hammer better. As a kid, I used to choke up on the hammer and I didn't get very much force on it. It's like, bam, bam, bam. I'm like, Dad, why am I having to hit this hammer 10 times? You have to hit this nail once. Like my dad, he would set it once, pop it once, and it'd be in like 2 hits. And, but I was not like that. Now I can do that. But when I was young, I couldn't. I had to tap that little sucker in, just keep pounding it. Right. And, so you want to learn how to, build wealth and manage your money better. I call it learn how to make, manage, multiply your money. so that you have purpose behind it. And then the millionaire plan, Jimbo, it's basically got a couple components to it, and that is you got to have a debt component, right? So most people have debt. So you got to go, okay, what's my debt plan? Am I going to use debt? Am I not going to use debt? Am I going to get out of debt? For me, I was like anti-debt. So from very early, I'm like, I don't want to use debt. I don't like debt. I don't want to be in debt. And so I've been debt-free for the last decade, except for I just took out another loan for a house that I'm working on a rehab. It's my first rehab property. And I don't know if I'm going to flip it or if I'm going to keep it, but it's my first rehab property. So I took out a loan to finish up the work on that. We ran out of some cash on it. So, it's just one of those things. So I don't like it, but I'm back in debt here after a decade. But I've been debt-free for a decade, and I enjoyed the run. Okay, so you have to have a debt plan. You have to have an income plan, right? So don't get stuck making the same money for the rest of your life unless you're making really good money. But like for me, I was making 39 grand my first year out of college. And I was making more than my mom. I think my mom was making 40 or 35,000. So I was making 39. She made 35. I'm like, man, boom, man. I've arrived. My mom's been at this game for 20 plus years. I just got into the game as an adult. I made 5 grand, 4 grand more than my mom. I'm on top of the world, right? That's what I thought mentally. What I didn't realize, because of the upbringing that I had and the family I came from, is that I could make $100,000 a year as a person. I didn't realize I could make $250,000 a year. I didn't realize I could make $500,000 a year. I didn't learn those things till I was in my late 30s and 40s, mid 30s and 40s. But that's reality for most people, that you can increase your income. You just have to think about how to do it. It's another one of those things where you put your mind onto a problem and go, okay, what skills do I have? What skills do I develop? And they call them marketable skills, right? So what marketable skills do I have? And another one is like, do I even want to have a job? Do I want to create a lifestyle where I don't have a job, but I have a way to create cash flow? I've got one friend. He's been stock trading probably for the last decade, and that's what he does. He does swing trading. So, and he has the way he teaches it. He goes, when I want to buy Starbucks, I don't go buy Starbucks. I go invest in Starbucks, and I make money off Starbucks, and Starbucks pays me to go drink their coffee. When I want Tesla, I don't go buy Tesla. I go invest in Tesla, and I make money off Tesla, and then Tesla pays me to drive their cars. And you can see how that works. So he learned how to make money in the stock market so that he doesn't even go to work on a job. He has a business that he runs now, where he teaches people how to invest. And his name's Jeremy Newsom. He's a fantastic guy. I love the guy. He's in his early 30s, mid 30s. But I'm learning from him because I don't think that way. Now, I was thinking that way a little bit, but I hadn't evolved for a long time, right? Because I was stuck in a different system. Now I'm in a different mindset, a different system. But you got your income plan, your debt plan. Then you need how do you multiply your money, your investing plan. So how am I going to invest my money to actually multiply it? Because that's the principle that most people aren't doing, right? Their budgets are going out into living expenses and into toys or, vacations, but all their money's flowing away from them. You got to create a mechanism that allows money to flow back to you. And we call that buying appreciating assets. That could be a stock. It could be gold, silver. If you buy it at the right time, it can be, cryptocurrency, although not right now, unless you bought like 4 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Now, if you bought in the last year and a half, you're probably down on crypto right now. But you got to learn some mechanism by which you can get that money accruing back to you and growing. There's a guy named Truth Jones. You can look him up. He started investing at 10 years old, African-American kid, started investing 10 years old, was a millionaire at age 11. Now he's a multimillionaire at age 14. So think about that one, right? I've got a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid. I'm like, man, I got to get my kids going. My goal right now is to get all my kids to become millionaires by age 30. So if they can all do it by 10 years earlier than me, I think I've done a pretty good job as a dad.
Excellent. And so right now we kind of live in a very crazy economic climate. So what do you see happening?
That's a dramatic pause. Here's the reality before I say what I really think is going to happen. If you know what you're doing in the financial sector and you learn and you got money smart, you can make money whether the season's good or bad. You can make money. It might be a little bit harder, but you can still make money. Okay. And that's been factual throughout history as well. We got a lot of things that we're facing right now, Jimbo, that are they're not good things. If you want to dig a little bit deeper, and we can talk as much about this stuff as you want. I think the biggest thing right now that people need to pay attention to is, and you can see this in the news, you can see this everywhere, that there's a high prediction of food shortages. So food prices are up. I think some people say 30, 40% right now. I think those food prices are going to continue to go much, much higher. I think you're going to see actual food shortages where you're not going to be able to get certain types of food. I've got a son who works for Taco Bell at times. He's going back to college now, so his summer work's over. And he even said that they were having problems getting products and stuff on the shelf at Taco Bell. So they had to literally remove items off the menu just because they couldn't get the products in. So that's supply chain. But even beyond supply chain, there are actual food scarcity problems related to wheat and some other stuff that's out there. So I think people need to pay attention to that very heavily. I would start stocking up on food. If you want to learn more about that, your listeners want to learn more about that, there's some videos out there from Jordan Peterson. I just saw one from him talking about it. There's a lot of people out there talking about this stuff. That is the most pressing issue right now for our country and the globe. The way I explain that is usually there are problems with food distribution in areas. Like, so you might have, if you have food distribution problems or growth problems in America, then, over in Ukraine or Europe or Africa, there's not a problem. So you can kind of move food around the world, right? It's interchangeable. Maybe you pay a little bit more for it, but food moves around the world. It's a system, right? It's a global system of food distribution, right? What's happening right now is there's food issues in all of those areas. Okay. So you got India, for example. I'll have to check the latest update, but about a month or two ago, they actually shut down shipments of rice out of the country. And India is a big rice producer. And so all of a sudden you have a major global distributor of rice, and all of a sudden they're not even shipping rice out of their own country anymore because they're keeping it for their own people because of what's coming. And so pay attention to that. I will tell you, once you start learning about it, learn about it first, but then as you learn about it and prepare all your listeners, I want you to know it's not a natural occurrence. And so I would encourage you to learn a little bit more about it, I believe it's very much an engineered occurrence. I don't believe it's a natural occurrence. And there's people out there talking about that as well. But the main thing I'm trying to do is when I go to the grocery store, or I go shopping, I ask people that are checking me out. I'm like, hey, what are you doing about the food shortages? And I'm just trying to tell people about what I see happening. I'm into this stuff every single day, reading the news and checking things out. And so I'm a lot more aware than most people are. That's the big one. I think the market right now, what's it trading at today? I think 33,000 or something like that. I don't know, north of 30,000. I think it's headed for a crash personally, Jim. I think you're going to see it drop. When you look at where Trump was at, when Trump took over from Obama in 2017, the market was around 17,000 points. So it's up at 32, 33, somewhere around like that. So you're only talking about 6 years ago, right? That's just 6 years in time perspective, 6 years. So when you rewind the clock stock market wise, you can see many periods in history where you saw a rewinding. So and some people, they go, oh, it's a drop, but I look at it as more of like a rewinding of time as well. So if you go, okay, if we're at 33 right now, what does Tony think is going to happen? Well, I'm going to go, you know what? It would not surprise me if the thing drops down to where it was 6 years ago. You're talking about 16, 17,000 points. Is it going to do that? Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I could be wrong. I think there's some indicators that show that can happen. Without going into a lot of detail, research it. I always advise people to research their own stuff. But there are many points in history where that happened. The most recent being 2008, 2009, right? And you saw it. Now, fortunately, in 2008, 2009, that with the housing crisis and the debt and stuff, It recovered within like 5 years. Now the question becomes like, oh, if it drops, it's going to come back. That's what you hear from all your financial advisors. They always say that, right? I had a friend the other day asking me about what I thought was going to happen. And his financial advisors are always saying, just leave your money in. If it drops, it's going to come back. If it drops, it's going to come back. Financial advisors are always going to tell you that, because if you pull your money out, yes, it does come back. Normally, it does come back. That is historically the fact. But what they don't tell you is that in the 1920s, when the Great Depression hit, it took 30 years for it to come back. So how many people that have their retirement savings in the market today, if the market did that, would still be alive in 30 years? And the answer is very few. In the 80s, same kind of thing, 70s. There was another 20-year period where the market dropped, and it took about 20 years for it to recover. So, the cycles are there. It's just a question of what do we really have happening in this season with what's going on in the world. And, I heard somebody the other day said, I think it was 1 in 4 ships right now. I think it was 1 in 4, 25%, may have been a higher number, are actually backed up in ports right now, that are not, the goods aren't coming off the ships because of the supply chain issues. And then when you look at that, there's always an effect. And I think what we're going to see is lagging. So the food crisis stuff is supposed to hit in the fall. And so we're only about 30 to 60 days away from seeing major shifts in the food stuff. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I've never been through it before. I've never lived through the season of time that we're living through right now. That's what I think is going to happen. So how do you protect against that? The big thing I'm looking at, there's a lot of ways to do it. Real estate. If you look, I always believe in looking at what the big guys are doing to actually, invest, because they know how to do it the best. They know what's going on. They have the insider information. The people in government, they know what's happening. And you can see that through their trader. They get, there's an insider trading bill going on. They're talking about that, how all these government people are doing insider trading, buying and selling stocks before. They're really not supposed to be doing that, but the laws aren't being enforced, so they're getting away with it right now. So I look at those things and see what they're doing. Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the country, close to 300,000 acres now. Jeff Bezos owns, I think, 350 to 400,000 acres of land now. So when you look at what those guys are doing, you go, okay, why are they buying up so much land? Well, land has always been an asset of wealth in every generation of the world. Every country, every empire, every dynasty, land ownership, right? Even in England, when you had the monarchy and the nobles, right? What was it? These are my lands. These are my lands. And then the peasants didn't have land ownership. The peasants lived on the Lord's lands, and the Lord was basically the law. There was no Bill of Rights, which what we have in the United States. There was no Constitution. That's why there was the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, those things. Because of that system they came out of, the people that came to America came out of that system. Those kinds of systems have existed in a lot of different areas of the world, right? For generations. So it's not just, England, France, Spain, Europe, similarly, probably to some degree, even in China, when you had the emperor or the emperor of Japan. So you see a lot of that. But you see Bill Gates and those guys, they're buying up all that land. That's a big deal. I would pay attention to that. A lot of people think they can't buy land because they can't afford it, right? That's not true. There's a wonderful guy named Mark Podolsky, the land geek. You can buy land. Any kind of land is an investment. I wish I had started buying land at 25. It was a lot cheaper back then. Today in my area, you can buy an acre. It depends on where you're at. You might get it for $6,000. Some acres will cost, $250,000 to buy it, depending on where it's at. But you can go other places and buy land. I should have been buying land for the last 25 years. I really didn't become a land buyer until really last year. I bought 10 acres, a farm with 10 acres and a big house on it. I should have just bought raw land by itself as an investment opportunity. I didn't do it. The other thing I would pay attention to is gold and silver. China and Russia for the last decade have been stockpiling gold and silver. So right now, a lot of people, the average person doesn't know that they have a gold-backed dollar, gold-backed currencies. That's what they're going towards. That's the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now I think they're pulling Iran into it. That's a different system. So the U.S. system of monetary system has been the dominant factor since the 1970s. Now that is starting to shift, and that is also another engineered change. It's not something that's happening as a natural occurrence. It is a engineered thing. It's people putting things to work. But that's in play, right? And right now, so silver used to be about $50 an ounce. So it is now down around $18 an ounce. Gold, on the other hand, is at peak. It's trading pretty much near its peak, but silver is not near its peak. Silver is like 60% off its peak. So that follows the investing rule of buy low, sell high, right? So you always want to buy low and sell high. So if silver's low and the ratio's off from gold, usually I think silver and gold ratio, I think it usually is like 50-1 or something. Maybe it's 70-1. I forget. Right now, the ratio is a lot higher. So it's like at 100-1 right now, maybe a little bit higher. So when that ratio is off, there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, you should be buying gold and silver right now, because that, again, is one of those things that has always been a representation of wealth across every dynasty, every empire, and been monetary value like for 3,000 years. Gold and silver has been a physical monetary piece for like 3,000 years or maybe longer. But those are things that I try to pay attention to. Did you know, Jimbo, that back in the Great Depression, Roosevelt made it illegal to own gold?
Never.
Yep, it was illegal to own gold. So they basically said, we want citizens to turn their gold in. And so what happened is, I think if I remember the numbers correctly, they were paying $28 an ounce for gold. And so all these Americans were turning in their gold to the government because it was now illegal to own gold. And so they turned in all their gold. And then after they collected it, I think they did 2, maybe 3 rounds. Okay, I'd have to go back and look at that, of gold collection. And once they got it all collected, they reset the gold price at like I think it was $33 or $35 an ounce. So all of a sudden, now that nobody has gold anymore, the government makes it more valuable. And then boom. And but yeah, that's a commodity. They said it's illegal for you to own it. Now that's what the Declaration of Independence was away from. That's why you see so many people talking about freedoms today, because there is an encroachment from the government on our freedoms in a lot of ways. But that's a real example in history of something that we were not allowed to have as citizens of the United States. Will that happen again if the government implodes financially? Which, honestly, I mean, if you were $32 trillion in debt, Jimbo, would you file bankruptcy? You probably would. That's what we're facing. Like, our government is, when you do the math on that, like that is like decades of debt repayment from taxes, from the people that are getting, paying taxes today. So, and I think we did, what was it, just yesterday? No, we got 2 things that just happened. We had the $700 billion Build Back Better bill, or partially, that they signed. And then there's the other bill that the student loan debt forgiveness thing, right? That I think that was an executive order. He just passed that. I don't even know how much that was. That 200 billion or something? I forget.
I think it was 200 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, I mean, those are blank checks, because every time one of those checks get written, that's taxes that's getting spent into the future, because we're already $32 trillion in debt. So we're paying, I don't even know what the debt repayment is every year, $600 or $700 billion in just debt repayment, like interest. So it's pretty nuts. And then we're given as a country, and this will blow your mind too. I was listening to a book. You should read this one, Jimbo. Actually, I recommend an audio book for your listeners. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. And it's about the founding of the Federal Reserve Bank. And it's a long read, but persevere it, get through it. It's got some good stuff in it. It's a 20-hour audio book, 20 hours on audio. So listen in your car. That's what I'm trying to do to get through it. But one of the things real interesting is these loans that have been given out to China, like these 0 interest loans, are given out by the Federal Reserve. And so these banks are basically loaning money And then China will get that money and they'll come back and buy land in the United States with a 0% interest loan. Think about that one. So it's money that technically is fake and doesn't exist. They created it out of vapor, and they just said, "Hey, here's 500 billion." And that every time they do that, every time the government spends that money, they are spending your life and my life. Because where does that money come from? The core of finance is it's a person. You're taking a person's life, okay? And you're going to work 100,000 to 150,000 hours in your lifetime, and you convert that into currency. Okay. So you're working to convert it into currency. That's the way the system works. Now, some people basically make money off that system in other ways, but that's the core, like the American taxpayer or anybody's taxpayer. Like every country collects taxes at some level, right? So when you convert that, the government collects a portion of it, and it's a pretty sizable portion. So when they spend money, they're actually spending your life, your work and your efforts, the fruits of your labor. They're spending that. So when they give that away to a China or Ukraine or wherever that is, they're really giving away your life essence. So think about that one. It's pretty mind-blowing, man. That's new thinking for me this year. I'm just trying to evolve. Like, what are we really doing? How does this system work? And at its core, that's how it works. And even the stock market. What's the stock market? People work and then put in their 401k and then put it in the stock market. What is it? The stock market. The stock market at its core is a collection of your life essence, because the average person that's working is putting it into that system. It's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? Like when you start thinking that way about it.
I've been shaking my head the entire time you've been saying this, because everything you're saying is just so true. And before we kind of jump off into those areas, I kind of just want to bring this back kind of to your book. So chapter 1, you talked about life, about growing up in kind of a financially messy home. You kind of elaborated about that at the start, but you kind of described what it was like. But what was sort of the purpose of making that the first part of the book?
Yeah, I think the purpose was because I think that's everybody's story, Jimbo. Like I mentioned, 70 to 80% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. That's in the U.S. Can you imagine? We would be labeled the wealthiest country on the face of the earth, probably the wealthiest country in history per capita, per person. And I know there are people in poverty in the United States and people that are hurting, but you want to see somebody that's hurting, you go over to Africa, you go over to Ethiopia, where they got millions of kids that are starving to death. Like, that's real poverty. When you can't get food and you're starving, there are very few people in the United States that are facing poverty at that level. By comparison, when you go to another country, it's millions. When you come to the U.S., it might be, you might skip a meal, you might go hungry for a few days, but you're not starving to death where you're basically a skin draped over a skeleton. It's horrific stuff to look at. So the purpose of my first chapter was to go, hey, I'm just an average guy like everybody else. There's nothing special about me. I grew up in Tennessee. I didn't grow up in California and go to UC Berkeley. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't get that education. I didn't go to a university. I went to a college. And even if I was to take my engineering degree, I faced a lot of, because I wasn't a recognized college that I went to. So I didn't face like an easy road to go find a job. I didn't face an easy road to go get a professional engineering license, which I never got. I didn't go get that. I ended up going a different route. But if I had gone those routes, it would have been very difficult. So I'm just the average Joe that any American can relate to, any person can relate to. Yes, I'm white. You can talk about white privilege or not white privilege. That's a whole nother discussion. I don't feel like I came from a white privileged family. There's a bunch of baggage back there. We won't go into all that kind of stuff. But that's the purpose of why I wrote that chapter, because I wanted people to understand that anybody can do this. The back of the book says anyone can become a millionaire. Why not you? And that's the story I'm trying to tell and the empowerment I'm trying to give people. Because I honestly, Jimbo, I could see from the stuff I'm learning and the stuff I'm teaching and the people I talk to, I really do believe anybody in America could become a millionaire. And then what does that look like when that society, and I got to start small, right? So I'm starting with my company I'm starting. So my goal is to have everybody I employ in my lifetime to become millionaires. Like when they work with me, their onboarding process is going to be building their millionaire plan. That's their onboarding process. And they're going to know at what point in the future they're going to become millionaires. I think we can do that for everybody in the city. And then once I get that city model built, I'm going to be able to do it in other cities. That's why I shared my story, because I'm just an average person like anybody else. And the stories that I tell on my show are the same things. And some of them had it a lot worse than I did. I had one gentleman, and I'll stop with this one, but Ming Wang, Dr. Ming Wang, he grew up in China. And as he was going into I believe the 9th grade, the Chinese government took 20 million youth and threw them into concentration camps. So they didn't get any education. They just went to concentration camps and worked and did stuff. And 3 years later, the guy that did that ended up dying. They said, hey, we made a mistake. Let's let everybody out, let all the kids back out. And he went home, and his parents go, hey, you gotta study and get ready for the university, because they're allowing kids to go back to the university now, and you got to get prepped for that. And he goes, and you got to catch up. And he goes, oh, you mean I got to do 2 years of school in 1 year? And he goes, no, you mean 3 years? 3 years of school? No, you got to do 4 years. You got to do your 9th, 10th, 11th. You got to do it all in 1 year. And so he was studying like 18 hours a day, nonstop, 6 hours of sleep, 18 hours of studies. That was his life. And his parents were poor. So they would literally, he said they would find scraps of paper and write the questions out for him on scraps of paper that they could pull together from trash and different things that they had. And so that was his life. And when he went to university, he got into the top percentage points, very highly ranked, went to school, got into university, did really well. And then he met a missionary, and the missionary said, you need to go to America. And he says, I'm going to help you. And so he bought him a ticket to America and gave him $50 in his pocket, came to America with $50 in his pocket as a university graduate, and then tried to get into doctoral school. He wanted to study, be a PhD, eye doctor. And the first university that met him said, oh, this is, you're not going to be able to do it. Asians don't do well, blah, 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 blah. Very racist kind of comments and stuff, right? So then he went and took these, I forget the MCATs or whatever it is that the doctors have to take, whatever that test is they have to take to go enter the universities. And he did, and he aced the thing. And then the teacher that the university that basically discounted him, now that he's on the top of the list of the kids that passed the test, like top percentage points, they came back asking him to come to their university. And he's like, no, you guys dissed me. I'm out. Like, I'm not doing that one. And he went to this other university. I forget the name of it, but Dr. Ming Wang. And, that story has more hardship in it than my story has. But those are the stories that are out there. And the goal is to empower people with those stories so that they'll stop making excuses and they'll grab hold of some vision and some hope.
Excellent. And, you sort of had, you wanted to get an engineering position, right?
Yeah, and I did some engineering for a while. I did engineering for about 6 years.
You turned it down, though, right? You turned down that offer.
Well, no, I went after I got out of college. It's interesting. I don't know how much time we have, but I did a little bit of an internship and then got out of school. And, my path was the engineering path. I loved math. I loved cars. I figured that was a good combination. That sounded like engineering. So I rebuilt my first car engine at age 14, 15 years old. I did hot rods. I sped way too much. It's a wonder I didn't kill myself on the highway somewhere. But that was my path, and I really loved it. And went and did engineering for about 6 years. And then during my engineering career, the company I worked for needed computer support. And that got me into learning about computers. If I did anything right in my lifetime, one of those was learning how to learn. So at a very young age, I used to go to, my mom ran convenience stores. And so I would go to the convenience store while she was working. I would go there to get dropped off the school bus at the convenience store. And I would usually have to stay there for an hour or two while she finishes up her work. So I was a convenience store rat or a convenience store kid. That's where I lived when my parents were working. But the one thing they had was a magazine rack. And I would read virtually like everything off of those magazine racks. And so I would read car magazines. They had, Carcraft magazine, Hot Rodder magazine, stuff like that. And I spent all my time learning about how to rebuild engines and build cars from those magazines. And then rebuilt my first engine when I was 14, 15 years old and then did hot rods for a number of years after that, and still do that some of that today with my wife. I got my wife down there. She's got a '69 Corvette that I bought her for her 40th birthday, and I've gotten her under the car a few times to turn some wrenches and do a little rehab on her '69 Corvette. But yeah, I did do engineering for a while. But then I switched into the internet once I became infatuated with what the power of the internet, what technology could do. Technology was just getting big at that time, and most people didn't have computers in their homes yet, but it was just starting. It was just the start of that computer age.
Great. And just to kind of lead on to that a bit more, your financial awakening, the thing that you had at 25, what was it like? And, how did it feel when that sort of happened to you? Was it when you started to go into the internet, or?
No, what really happened for me was when I got my first W-2 out of college, and I saw on my W-2 that I made $39,000 because I basically had mismanaged my money the entire time I had gotten out of school. So my financial journey after college and even during college, my parents helped me out a lot. I overspent in college, and it's because my parents didn't have much when they were growing up. So they tended to overcompensate, right? Parents do that. They want the best for their kids. So they will sacrifice their well-being for their children. And my parents were examples of that. They sacrificed their well-being for my sister and I. And I didn't really appreciate that really until I was in my 30s when I started, getting a little bit more aware of those kinds of things. I'm like, oh, man, thank you. You guys really did. I think in my 20s, in your teens, you don't understand it. You just live. In your 20s, you think you know everything, so you're kind of distracted. But in my 30s, I really developed a deep sense of appreciation for my parents and the sacrifices that they made. Even though they didn't have a lot of money, what they did have, they did sacrifice for us. So when I got out of school, I was still mismanaging my money. So my first 3 months, I got out of college and thought the job offers were just going to roll in, right? So I had resumes, and if I saw a job application, or a job posting, I would apply for it. And I think I might have done a few job interviews or something, but I didn't know what it meant to go really find a job like that, like a skilled job. I knew how to go find fast food. I knew how to go work convenience stores. I did not know how to go find a job at that level, that next tier of income or that next professional level. And one day my dad, so I'm living off of credit cards at home, not doing a whole lot. And my dad and my mom talked, and my dad came in and go, you got to go find a job. Like, you're going to find one. And and you know what, until you do, I'm going to find one for you. And so he gave me a job. He had done some work and he was a carpenter. So he did some work at a body shop for this guy and put a door on or something like that. I don't know what. And the guy let me, because I'd done some car work, let me come in and do body shop work. And so, he told him, he said, oh, my son knows how to do some body shop work. You should have him in here to help you because he needed some help. So I went in and worked for a day, and I did some Bondo work. If you know what that is, it's just like a plaster you put on the car to try to fix dents and stuff. And the guy put it on, and then I was supposed to come in and work it and then get the lines down so that it matched the car really, really well. And I wasn't very good at it. I hadn't done it very much, but the guy let me in. So basically I worked for that guy for one day. And he didn't want me back. He didn't want me back the next day. So I didn't do a good job. It was a one-day wonder. Paid me like $10 an hour, and then he's like, get out. And so that kind of got me back in the job flow of working. So I worked for a temporary service. That was my next thing because that was immediate money. I just went and signed up for temp service. And my first day on that job, I actually was cleaning floors after a conference in town, downtown Nashville. And I showed up probably with like 20 other people. And we were just cleaning up, sweeping floors, moving stuff around, whatever they told us to do. We were just, hired labor. And by lunchtime, I think there were 6 of us left. Like 14 of the people that were with us were all gone. And I'm like, where did everybody go? Like, we're the only ones still working. Like, this is like, it's noon. We got here at 6. It's noon. Like, there's like 6 more hours to do. And they're like, oh, these people don't want to work. They just want to come in. And I'm like, oh, I don't think that way. I feel like you got a job. You got to work. Like, that's the way I was programmed, and my dad saw my dad and my mom do it. So that was kind of my early stages, but I still didn't make a lot of money. So then I finally landed that engineering job where I made that $39,000. And then I'm like, when I got that check, I'm like, man, I got $500 in the bank and $16,000 on credit cards. And not on credit cards. I had about 13 on the car and about 3,000 on credit cards. And I'm like, that's a terrible way to live. Like, that doesn't work. And so once I saw that misalignment of finances and what I had done, I'm like, I can't ever do that again. Like, that's a bad year. Like, I need to fix that. Like, if I'm gonna have that kind of money, I need to fix it. And that's what was my financial awakening. It was that aha moment to go, hey, this isn't working. I need to shift. What am I going to shift? And I didn't know what to shift at the time, but I knew how to learn. So when the problem came up, just like I had learned how to work on cars, I studied magazines to learn how to fish. There's a lot of good bass fisherman magazines there. Read quite a few of those, taught some of the neighborhood kids how to bass fish, told them what lures to use, just because I was a reader, right? I learned things and I could teach other people doing that very young age. Started my own fishing tournament when I was young too. That's a little bit of trivia. I don't think that's in the book, but neighborhood fishing. We only had about 6 guys working on it, but I had the system set up. And but yeah, that was my catalyst to go. That's my financial awakening. I think everybody's got to have one of those, right? We mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier. A lot of people go, I'm having money fights in my marriage, can't pay my bills, life sucks. I got to change. So that's their financial awakening. And then they go looking for, like, how am I going to get some help? And they come across Dave Ramsey or somebody else, and then they have that financial awakening. That's how it looked for me, is I'm like, this is not a good formula. Let me change my formula so that I don't, and that helped me get off that hamster wheel that we talked about earlier, that financial hamster wheel.
Excellent. This is going to be kind of the last question that I'm going to kind of lead off with, because I think this one is super important. But our country is sort of overwhelmed with debt. And, some people are kind of, they think debt is sort of a part of their life. How do you think this kind of relates back to personal finances? And what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think the government being in debt is a ridiculous thing. And I'm going to tell you, you've got to, if you want to understand our government's debt, you have to go through The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. People need to understand that the people holding that debt hold the same debt over basically all the countries of the world. There is a group of people that own all the banks across all the countries. And that's the system. It's a system. It's a financial system. It's their financial system. And that financial system is designed to make slaves of everybody on the planet. Okay? It's the system and the model. When you understand it, you start to understand debt and how pervasive it is. Why does college education as expensive as it is? It's gone up, 400 or 500% in the last 2 decades or something. It's because they made debt available for student loans. And it's couched as, hey, we need money. Kids need money to go to school so that they can go to college. But by making that money available like they did, it drove up the prices because it put too much cash flow into the market and rose the prices of education. Now I've had some clients, $200,000 in student loans with $50,000 a year jobs. There is no world in which that makes sense. It's ridiculous. You would be better off not even getting a college education, just going to learn how to make some money, because a lot of people make money without ever getting a college education, and then just go do that, right? Because you don't have to have a college education to make money. You need college education to go be an architect, because you got to be trained to be an architect, unless you become a journeyman, right? You could be trained and sit, which is the old way of doing things, right? Where you get attached to a master, he has a protege or a helper, and that's where you learn your craft. That's an old way of doing things. Now we, just print people by going to college, universities. To be an engineer, you have to go through formalized training. I had to go through that to learn all the math, the science, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a requirement for me. It's not as much for some other things. But the government debt, it was created as a system, and you have to understand that when a country engages in somebody else's system, and the Federal Reserve Bank is not a part of the United States government. People don't understand that. The Federal Reserve Bank is just a nice name for a business that makes money off the people and the government. And the government borrows the money. The taxpayers pay the debt on the money that the government borrows. And that's why you see this ever expanding circle of debt in the government. And to be honest, it's scary, because the money gets printed out of nothing. There's no real value behind it. The only thing that creates value is we decide to use it. So the only reason it even exists is because we decide to use it. but they're buying land and gold and silver and companies with money that they create, manufacture, because we allow them, and they buy the assets. And then we end up paying the debt on those assets. We as American citizens do, but that goes for every country. You can talk about Brazilians. Same model exists down there. They have a central bank. It's owned by the same people that owns this federal central bank that we have. That needs to stop. Like I talked to you about earlier about citywide financial transformation. If you want wealth and abundance for everybody on the planet, those central banks got to go. They got to go, because that wealth that we create, that life essence, that system is designed to collect our life essence. So we convert it into currency, they collect it, and then they use it to control and manipulate different things across the planet. And so there's a lot of stuff out there. You guys can go read on that. That was the main thing around that. Now, debt in our own lives. Okay. If you listen, I'm a no debt guy. I like being debt free. Okay. Debt carries a risk. All debt carries some level of risk. Now, some people think they can beat that risk, and they might beat it for a season, and then it could blow up on them. So, like, I had some friends that had properties. A lot of people went bankrupt in 2008, 2009. So you had a lot of people that were leveraged on debt, using debt to build wealth, which can be done. It can be done. But when the system breaks or blows up like it did in 2008, 2009, you had a lot of people went bankrupt. And they weren't ready. They didn't understand the risk properly, or they didn't have a system or a plan to adapt to that risk. And I think that's the big key. If you're going to mess with debt, if you're going to leverage debt, if you're going to use debt to build wealth, you better understand the risks and have a plan around it. And I would say just educate yourself on it, because it does carry risk. I don't care who you are. It carries risk at some level.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, this has been, an excellent interview. You've definitely given a lot of interesting, information. And, I hope you like this interview just as much as I did. So, yeah, if there's any final words you'd like to kind of deliver to the audience.
Yeah, I would say just take time to get money smart, guys. Invest in yourself. That's the best way to say it. Your time of learning is investing in yourself. The more you invest in yourself, the better off your life's going to be. Whether you're investing in your marriage, I've got 6 kids. I have to learn how to parent my kids better, right? So I have to learn and study how to parent kids in a better way. Any of those things that you want in life to make your life more fulfilled, invest in yourself, and maximize your time. One thing I don't do, Jim, we didn't talk about this. The average American spends 120 hours a month watching television or videos. Those kinds of things are not investing in yourself. That's entertainment. It goes nowhere. And just like your money can appreciate and bring value back to you, like through investments, your time is the same thing. So the more of your time that you put out there into things that return investment and dividends back to you, the better your life's going to be. Whether that's investing in your marriage so that it comes back, investing in your kids so it comes back, investing in your health. I neglected my health for a while. I paid a price. Now I'm investing in my health again. I'm getting healthier. That comes down to eating and exercise and things like that. But you got to, rewire your mind to do that and develop a vision for your future. If you can't develop one and you need help, feel free to jump on a call with me. I give a 1-hour free call away every day to anybody that wants to book time with me. You can find me at the Millionaire Choice, millionairechoice.com, and get on my calendar. I'll be glad to talk to anybody that wants to.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks again, Tony. So we're just going to do a quick little shout out here. So the first thing we're going to talk about now is going to be Judy Ryan. She is the CEO of LifeWork Systems. She's our affiliate and collaborative partner. And basically what she does is she helps to improve the HR infrastructure in your business and create a more collegial environment. And then sort of the next thing we like to get into is our YouTube channel. Subscribe now. We're growing in subscribers now, so keep subscribing to us. Next thing is our Roku channel. We're available on Roku TV, so check us out there as well too. And then the final thing is Jimbo Paris Services. We now own a drop servicing business. We provide you with episodes that we can edit for you. We make sound bites. We do all the editing for a podcast, and we can even find guests for you as well. And we're working with a few reputable corporate businesses right now, and check us out. We can help you out too. All right. I'm Jimbo Paris. This is the Jimbo Paris Show. Thank you for listening to the Jimbo Paris Show.